Okay, well, we've passed the 2-minute mark. Welcome, everybody, to Triton Data Center Office Hours. Thank you very much for joining. And sorry about the ambiguity of the announcement on Discord on the date. So I'll make sure to announce it much earlier. I was just caught up in some things. And I was like, oh, I forgot to post the announcement. So I'll make sure, because we didn't have one 2 weeks ago, but we'll try to keep the regular cadence here. So welcome, everybody. Thank you again for joining. What we wanted to talk about today, let me just get my screen share going here. And of course, somebody had commented on the resolution of the screen share on the video. And unfortunately, because I don't have Nitro Discord, it doesn't let me do anything but 720, which is kind of cruddy. But what I will do is I'll either get Nitro or I will just post the slides all together. So, anyways, welcome to Triton Data Center Office Hours today, the 15th, the day after Valentine's. What I wanted to discuss today was a little bit, obviously, there's the announcement by VMware that they are discontinuing ESXi free. And among the other things that we've talked, VMware has been doing in the space, which, is, I'm okay with it because, I haven't used VMware myself, but, there is users of their products. But we obviously offer Triton Data Center, which, is a competitor basically, but I think is a great product. And I think it's a great time for people to check out something different. And the fact that if you look at Triton Data Center and, it's open source, so there's no way we could take away the download and things like that. But if you do want to get support, it's not super complicated. So it's, if you do look at the licensing model, it's much simpler. It's not there to like complicate and you need like a lawyer or somebody sitting there just to calculate how many cores and all that. It's super simple. And so that's a great feature of it. But Broadcom themselves are kind of opening up people to other options, especially in the smaller commercial space, right? Because they're, big enterprises might stick with VMware because it's going to take a big shift for them to do it. But there's people who are saying, okay, I want to do something different. This is too expensive or this is too complicated. And then there's the people like us who do work at companies and we want something at home, right? So we want to have stuff to work on at home. So our home labs and stuff like that. And Triton and SmartOS provides actually a great way to work on, a hypervisor at home. And we're looking to ourselves improve the experience in that as well. So we'll talk about that upcoming here. So, like I just mentioned, Broadcom VMware has discontinued the free ESXi hypervisor, marking it as end of general availability with no substitute offered. This is directly from them, right? They say no substitute offered. But ESXi was one way for, and I made a mistake there, but for way to learn the VMware ecosystem, and it was leveraged in home lab use. So people coming out of school or are new to the workspace, that was the way for them to download something and be able to learn VMware at their own pace or at home, and get experience with some of the VMware ecosystem at home without having to make a big personal investment. And that was advantageous for people because they were able to learn what they might be using in the workplace. But with many changes to pricing and licensing, there's many people are looking at alternatives to VMware in the commercial space. So as far as like hypervisors goes, there's KVM, so Proxmox, and Linux itself, KVM. So Proxmox obviously is a Linux offering. It's based on Debian, but Proxmox is a popular one that people use at home, and they do have a support offering as well. LXC on Linux as well, and that's also offered in Proxmox. You can do containers there. There's Zen, so there's the Citrix commercial offering, and XCP-ng, and they also have a supported offering as well. there's like tricks and things you can do to like unlock some of the features. Like you have to compile and do some installation for some of the features that they kind of close up on XCP-ng, but there's ways to get some of the features that are locked in there. But it is, it's extra work you have to do. And then, there's Illumos, so SmartOS and Triton Data Center, OmniOS, Trilix, and then of course, Oxide, is also using Illumos in their offering. But I don't think I have the space in my home or the money to purchase a Oxide rack, so that won't be happening. But SmartOS and Triton Data Center, offer open source to run hardware VMs with Beehive and OS virtualization with containers, and that's zones. And we all know this because you guys are users of SmartOS. But just thought I'd reiterate for somebody who might be just stumbling onto this video. And then why SmartOS and Triton Data Center? I'm kind of preaching to the choir a little bit, but they're open source and are available for downloaded installation. So that's a big thing, right? You're not going to be locked out, as you might see with like ESXi or maybe even XCP-ng or things like that, where they may just decide one day, oh, we're not going to support it anymore, or we're not going to give you new features and things like that. We're committed, and the community is committed to continuing offering SmartOS, and of course MNX committed to Triton Data Center as well, to continue to be available, because we use the product ourselves. We have customers who we support, and we obviously want more people to use it, and so we'll continue to offer that. And then support is available for Triton Data Center, and I say that specifically because you can download standalone SmartOS, but currently there's no like support available for that for standalone SmartOS. But if you do want support for Triton Data Center, you can have an enterprise level private cloud, knowing that you have potentially a neck to throttle, as we say. But yeah, basically you have the ability to get support. And we've heard from many of the users, it just works, right? So a lot of people who are using Triton Data Center, they don't have to reboot it a lot. Like a lot of times we hear about compute nodes and zones that are up for a long time and they just work. Very few issues. It runs in memory, so there's easy upgrades and easy management. We've talked about that in the past. Brian, you've talked about that like operating system should do that, and you think was it Mac OS is moving to something like that, or was it I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, Mac OS uses an immutable boot image, and they have everything on the file system that you can edit is in a separate logical file system now.
Yeah. So, we've been using that model for a while, but you're seeing that's a great way to run operating systems. So, and then the easy management. With Triton Data Center specifically, you get the admin portal and APIs, right, to manage complete control and overview of your cloud. And I say that with an S because you may have multiple installations of a Triton Data Center, as we have many people running multiple availability zones or multiple data centers, and they're able to link those with something like UFDS, where you can have your users and information synced across data centers. So there's some great advantages to using Triton Data Center. And then SmartOS, just standalone SmartOS, it offers the ability to take advantage of all the benefits of Illumos, ZFS, Beehive, zones, in an easy to install package. And I think there's an OmniOS AMI on Amazon, but you can of course boot SmartOS on the MNX.io cloud. So if you need to run a standalone SmartOS, test something out, the MNX.io cloud is really awesome and easy to spin up stuff, and it's obviously Triton Data Center. And then if you do want to do SmartOS, you can boot those even on Equinix Metal. I'm not sure of the complete status of Triton Data Center on Equinix Metal. I think we still need to do some updates, they've changed and deprecated a bunch of stuff in Equinix Metal. Like they're changing the nomenclature of their it's called metros now, so you can't actually even
Yeah.
select.
Yeah, they changed facilities to
Yeah,
metros.
you can't even select a specific data center in Equinix Metal anymore. You can select a metro,
Right.
so you can select like San Francisco or Dallas, but you can't pick like Dallas 1 or Dallas 2. Because as we talked about, what do people do? They'll always pick one, right? Because that's the number one is the best, right?
Yeah.
Um, so they kind of took that ability away because what happened was they would see that like the lower numbers would just fill up automatically. So to better spread the hardware across, or sorry, spread the availability across their data centers, they developed the concept of metros. And then what they did in the metros, though, is they allowed them to all be networked. And so even though you're in a quote unquote separate physical facility in a metro, it still operates like you were in that same availability zone. So they've improved their networking and done some stuff. And let me just check the chat here. Over here. Okay, just 1 second here. Okay, so yeah, macOS moving to similar model was very amusing. Okay, I see here. Okay, so anyways, yeah. So Equinix Metal, like I said, they've changed some stuff, but I think we'll work to hopefully improve that. They've changed the API, and we can work to work on that. But we'll we'll work to improve that. Okay, let me close the chat up here, and then so in as I say all of that, one of the things I wanted to talk about was like home lab, right? So if you're looking for like an easy way to do like SmartOS at home, or do some, build up a home lab, and you want to take advantage of, SmartOS or potentially Triton, um, there's some hardware, like used hardware that's available you can do. So like I've purchased some off lease. I purchased an off lease server off of eBay.
I can't hear you anymore. Weird.
You can't hear me? Dan, did you say you can't hear me?
That's what he said.
Okay.
But I can hear you.
But you can hear me? Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I can hear just fine too.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just going to say that, used hardware. So like, like I said, I purchased an off lease server off eBay, and mine's kind of old, but as you go, as more enterprises upgrade and stuff like that, you can find pretty good hardware for not too much. Like the one I purchased had 256 gigs of RAM. I think I only paid like $300 at the time, and it's got like 24 cores, and it's a little bit older Xeon, but for the money it was pretty good. And you can look at the Illumos HCL for like if you're looking for certain NICs or things like that were supported. Now, if they're in the Illumos HCL, it doesn't 100% mean that it's in. That doesn't mean it's 100% supported by SmartOS? Is that correct, Dan? Or Brian, do you know?
No, if it's in the Illumos HCL, then it should be fine on us.
Okay.
But like we don't really do like X11. So various like graphics things or audio things that like Illumos supports, we're not really going to use them on SmartOS. And just because it says that it's supported by Illumos doesn't mean that we're going to pass that through to a VM in any way.
Okay.
Or that like other kinds of like pass-through stuff will work. It's so there's that caveat on it. But
yeah,
for like storage devices, network devices, if it's supported by Illumos, it'll be supported by us.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure I didn't say, oh, because if you do look at the list, like the top of the list, they'll show you a bunch of like audio chipsets and stuff like that, and that's not important to SmartOS.
Right. Yeah, I mean, technically they're supported.
Right.
But like there's no tools to play audio. Like I don't know, maybe you could get something through package source or like compile it yourself or just like cat a file to the audio device. And if you have speakers attached, like some sound should come out. Um, you know, so yeah, like technically they're supported, but um, audio and video stuff is not really like going to be practical for use with SmartOS.
Yeah, because I was looking at the list, I was like, oh, there's all these audio chipsets, but yeah, that and like you just explained,
Yeah.
that's one of the things is on there. But yeah, and in the chat, I'll just say Dan noted, yeah, Intel i350, i21X are good. Some models of Broadcom the Broadcom 57XX, and coming soon i225, i226. I mentioned this in the slide at the end. I did mention the i225, i226 as potential work coming up, and some older Realtek 1 gigs of work too. I did mention these two, like the used Chelsea NICs for like, I think I got mine for $30, so like $40. And then there's the used Mellanox Connect X3 Pros. I found one today on eBay for $30 with QSFP 40 gigabit Ethernet. And you do want to be careful because if you look at some of the Mellanox cards, they'll say they support a certain Ethernet speed, and their other speed might be their InfiniBand speed, right? So just be aware of that. That if you're looking at that and you just see their InfiniBand speed, it is not necessarily their Ethernet speed, and that's a different protocol. And so you're looking for Ethernet, just pay attention to that. And then, so the Chelsea NICs that and the Mellanox NICs, they're SFPs, right? So they are not the RJ45s. There is some Intel, I think like the X500 series, and there's a few that
I'm gonna be I'll be posting 10 gig base T parts momentarily.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some base T cards as well. So if you're using base T 10 gig, you can look into that as well. It's a little bit more expensive, I think, just because I think they're more popular, but they can still be had for a decent price. And then if you are doing SFP, 10 gig, and you can do direct attach cables or the optical cables, AOCs. I was just looking at pricing those, and all these prices, the two prices for the NICs are eBay and then fs.com for the cables, just kind of gauging the average price, right? So you can get those cables for not too much. So you don't have to go and buy, two transceivers and then an optical cable with the DACs and AOCs, unless you really, you need a long run or you have to do something interesting. You can buy these DACs and AOCs and they come with two of the transceivers, right? So they can plug into each end of the SFP. So that's why these are actually, 10 gig and 40 gig. They're actually starting to get reasonable in the home lab. So if you're doing, a lot of data transfer, you want to build a storage box or something like that, and you need to transfer between different units. This is where this networking can get interesting and reasonable, right? So, especially if you have a lot of like, NVMe or SSD storage on your box, and you want to use it for serving media or something like that. This is where this can get interesting. And so it's starting to really come down in price. It's so interesting to me that like 1 gig has been the standard for so long, even though we have N base T, so that's the 2.5 gig, 5 gig base T, and 10 gig has been available. And then, we're getting up into, 400 gig and even higher. I was watching a thing about, the AI processing where they need like RDMA NICs, and they have to have like really high speeds, so they can keep up with all of the GPU stuff. So there's really high speeds, but the great thing is that as this hardware gets changed out, right, it gives an opportunity for us, using home labs or just building our boxes for home to get hardware that's off lease for relatively cheap. The other thing I wanted
think the reason that 1 gig has remained a standard for so long is that in consumer spaces, even like workstations, it's almost impossible that you're going to need something greater than that. Like how many HD video streams do you need to be watching simultaneously in order to saturate 1 gig? Like on a individual workstation, like 1 gig is going to be fine for anybody. Going beyond that, you're definitely in server class hardware.
Yeah. Another thing that caps 1 gig a lot is that officially Cat 5e supports 1 gig,
right.
and a lot of 5e is out in the field.
Yes.
Apparently 2.5 and 5, one of their respective advantages are that they can run on 5e, and that's why Intel came out with the 225 and 226.
Yeah.
Although the 225 has hardware problems with 2.5 speed. Just warning y'all. That, but yeah, a lot of that has to do with cabling. I mean, if you have Cat 6 or better, you can run 10 gig without much issue, unless you're going over massive distance. But
yeah, like you said,
home lab, that isn't going to be a problem.
Yeah, a lot of places, the cabling was done. It's hard to go redo a whole building of cabling. I've actually, back in 2014, I was working at a startup when we had moved from one office to another, and it was like completely. The building we were moving into was like completely empty. Like we had to customize it for our use, and so I was on the team. Like we helped do all the cable runs and all of the ports and the desks and all that stuff. And it is just it's just a crazy undertaking if you've ever done it, moving into a building or moving somewhere and customizing for a tech business or any business really that uses the internet and needs workstations, right? It's just crazy. And there's a ton of and like you think Cat 5 cables are Cat 6 is cheap, but when you're doing like a ton of cabling, the price difference does make that difference in price makes a huge difference because of how much you're using. But as we do get to newer installations, right, I think because you can run 10 gig over Cat 6. I think there's a limit. I have to look up the limits, but you can't do the full 100 meters on Cat 6 for the 10 gig, but for short runs it definitely works. And then, like I said, the direct attach coppers, the AOCs, and there's a few other, there's obviously fiber as well. If people have fiber, that's usually used for different floor to floor or building to building. They might have fiber in place for that, and that's why like Brian was saying, that like a lot of places just have 1 gig. But one of the things I do see is like more people are getting into a lot of video editing, and so people are building a lot of storage based things, so they're having all their raw footage and stuff like that. I see a lot more people taking advantage of faster networking. Now usually that's between so they have like maybe a Mac or a workstation, and some of those do have, like, for instance, like they have Thunderbolt you could do Thunderbolt networking. Actually, you could do Thunderbolt to Thunderbolt on some devices, but that's obviously not going to be on a server. But they do have like Thunderbolt 10 gig NICs, and some of the Pro Macs, like the iMac Pro and stuff like that, offer 10 gig networking, and some of the higher end Macs, they offer 10 gig networking built in, and they do have, I think some of them might have PCI Express slots. I don't know, but so you might be able to upgrade some of that stuff there. But of course, Mac loves to make it so you can't customize anything anymore. But yeah, just like we're just seeing a lot more of this use at home, and then it is cool to build like a workstation, using some off-lease gear if you want like to have a nice workstation at home. So this is one way to do it. And then the other thing I was going to mention about the hardware too is so there's these dumb switches. So I don't know if you guys watch I watch Serve the Home, which is a YouTube channel, and they review a lot of, in fact, the gear. I think somebody was mentioning those lower end boxes with like the i225, i226. They review a lot of those little fanless machines that have like 6 Ethernet ports on them, and I think those would be great for SmartOS as well when they have i225, i226 support, and some of them even have SFP. But I just went on Amazon and Serve the Home. They reviewed a few of these, like, it's basically there's like some Chinese manufacturer, right? And they kind of have an OEM manufacturer of some switches, and then like people like basically slap their name on it. So like they slap like 5 different brands, but they're all kind of like the same brand. So there's some like there's QNAP, and that's like the most expensive out of these ones, but it has 2 SFP ports, SFP plus ports, and 4 2.5 gig ports for $149. And these the first 3 are all unmanaged switches, so they're all dumb switches, but they offer pretty much the same configuration, which is 4 2.5 gig base Ts and 2 10 gig SFP plus ports, starting at $149 all the way down to $45. And then the managed one, it had good reviews. I haven't used it, so I can't speak for the managed part of it, but the reviews saying that, you know, it works pretty well. So if you do need like a little bit of VLAN or VLAN separation or things like that, that might be an option, but I don't know how well that part works. You can get it for, you know, $59. There's also MikroTik, but you know, that's not like, there's some caveats obviously to these. They don't have the best processors in them, so if you do anything but dumb switching, you're going to run into some slowness. So like with MikroTik, if you do like layer 3 at all, it just slows down to completely to a crawl. So it's really
I also
just
hear security horror stories about them, but
exactly.
that's from not many sources.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you sir,
Yeah,
anybody? So go ahead, Brian.
I was gonna say I'm not a fan of MikroTik
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just putting it out there, and these might be in a similar category because they're like I said, they're kind of cheaply made in a way, and I'm not speaking to the quality, just saying that if you want a cheap option, these might be one thing you look at. But like we were saying, that in like on the Serve the Home thing, some of these boxes, they have 6 ports inside the box, so that you're using Intel copper in them, so then you can control it, you know, as an individual NIC and stuff like that. So you might not need necessarily to have a switch. You can do some direct connect if you need to, or if you really do need some switching, you might want to, you know, invest in a more reputable brand. But if you just need dumb switching, these might be your option. If you're not too worried about security and you have your firewall, or you're doing stuff, you know, separate, then this might be an option. Just putting that out there. So like I said, there's videos on it from Serve the Home. There's other people who have reviewed them. So there's information out there. You can do some research on it. But I just wanted to plant the seed that if you're looking for these, like I'm looking to maybe get one just to test out like 2.5 gig base T. And I have, like I said, I have 2 ports of 10 gig SFP on my server. So, you know, but I'm using DAC cables to connect to my other box. So I don't necessarily need a switch, but this might be an option. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there as far as like, you know, so if you're looking at the cheaper home lab and stuff like that, and those boxes, those fanless boxes, you know, hopefully we're looking to support that. And so let me go to the next page here. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about SmartOS Triton future. So more hardware support. So we mentioned the i225, i226 support coming in the future. Not putting a date on that, but we're looking at that. More ConnectX, so the newer Mellanox support is coming. We're looking at potential for GPU pass through. So I know um, the base of it is there, the framework is there. So I think we just need to work to um, get that to the finish line. So there'll be GPU pass through possibility available. Um, the one thing I wanted to
Yeah, we're
mention.
looking
Okay.
at that primarily for private cloud type environments, where there's much less concern over um, like cross VM trust. Something like a public cloud, the like device sharing model for like a VGA device or something like that is really not appropriate. Um, but there are people that they run Triton in their own private cloud, their own facility, their own premises, and they want to do something like that. And so we think, we shouldn't stop them in those cases. So
And, to mention too, yeah, is that it's the multi-tenancy thing. It hasn't been worked out right. So we're definitely going to offer that to that sector first. But like I said, it's going to be there potentially for use if potentially you need to use GPU pass through. There's the possibility of a web GUI similar to Proxmox and Admin UI, but for standalone SmartOS. And I say there's a high possibility, high probability. I know people have asked for something like this. I think going back to like maybe even the very first office hours, I think there's a couple of questions like, why doesn't SmartOS have like a web GUI or something like that? And I was like, that makes sense. Like, yeah, that would be kind of cool to have that. So definitely, if you're interested in that, I would keep a lookout because we're having a lot of discussions around offering something like that because, as we talked about at the beginning, right, there's all these other options like Proxmox and all that. And SmartOS really is awesome in that same space, in that same home lab space. Because if you go and look on like Reddit home lab, you'll see people say like, oh, what about SmartOS and Triton? Or even like on the SmartOS, somebody was like, is SmartOS still alive? Because there was one part of the website that had some like older stuff on it, and we're like, yeah, we're still here. You may have just missed that certain part of the website was like some old images that just had been, but we're still here. But I think what can really put SmartOS into the hands of more people, right, is something easy to use. I mean, command line is great. APIs are great. I use them. But sometimes just to get more people using it, and even for somebody who uses command line, sometimes you just want like click through, because I've used Proxmox and stuff like that. That would be great to have as an option to just have on standalone SmartOS, right? So please be on the lookout for that. If we do get there, we'll be looking to add features in the future. So I think we'll have some discussion on that going forward. As we try to look to add and decide what features would be great to have. I mean, there'll be like, obviously there'll be like a first release probably that we work on, but if we do that, we'll always be looking to improve and add things, as that's always the goal with these types of 1.0 releases, right, is to get an MVP and then just improve upon that. And then just other features to help proliferate SmartOS and Triton to more users in home lab and in the commercial space, right? So, posting just about things that we already do have, but I'll be scanning Reddit, different places just to see like what, features and what people may be discussing that I think we can look to add. I don't know if you guys have any things that you have thought of recently that maybe we could take down as in the discussion. But yeah, if there's some stuff that you guys are thinking of, let us know. We can talk about it right here. But is there anything big things that you guys were thinking of? chat too. Okay. Okay, so let me just bring up some of the stuff in the chat. The web UI would be nice, but also share data sets, like having image API available in SmartOS. Okay. How is GPU pass-through security when the GPU is only assigned to a single VM? How far is it from being functional now? I can't comment on that. So if you want to, thank you, Brian.
Yeah, it's functional now. There's like if you're doing SmartOS standalone, VM already supports everything you need to do GPU pass through. So if the device is recognized by SmartOS and we can attach to it, then we can pass the device ID in with the Beehive payload. And that will pass in. It's even documented in VM how to do that. At least I'm pretty sure it is. So if you're in the context of single tenant, everything's fine. The main issue with it really is DMA stuff, because with DMA, what you're getting really is whatever entity is in control of that device is allowed to write directly to physical memory. Direct memory access, DMA. And so there's potential for a malicious actor to get in there and be malicious, and having DMA access, there's not really places where you can get in the middle and make sure that it's going to be safe. And so for a public cloud, something that's going to do DMA is just like a no. Like we're not going to do that. The only possible scenario for that would be where the entire compute node is dedicated to a single tenant. But even then, there still may be like escape vectors, like onto the admin network, being able to just write anywhere in memory. But yeah, I think I answered the question. If there's follow-up, let me know.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and then just to repeat what was in the chat, barebones. I said this already, but or a bare bones Docker endpoint available in plain SmartOS. It's all drivers all the time. So and that's one thing too. Yeah, that's a big thing of ours, right? Is like we're trying to work on catching up on some drivers. So like obviously we said the i225, i226, because that when that's complete, that opens up a big set of hardware, right? So those basically, Intel has moved away themselves from NUC and they gave it to like ASUS. But there's all these other manufacturers taking advantage of that small fanless form factor that's kind of in the same space as the NUC, but in a better way because it has more connectivity. So it has NICs and serial ports and things like that, right? So stuff that is like missing on the Intel manufactured NUCs, right? So I think we were talking about this yesterday, it was yesterday, like having to wire up a serial port. You can do it on the NUC, but you have to like go in and like wire it yourself, right? So these boxes offer that same form factor, but they have more connectivity, and they offer some upgradability, which NUCs did offer a little bit of, but this gives you more ability to do different networks, and the ability to have some different storage options as well. That the Intel NUCs, I don't know what the latest or the last manufactured Intel NUC was, but there was my dad even has a NUC. I was surprised at how small they were, but I just remember like, oh, if I want to add like another network card, it has to be like There was one way to like wire it, I think, into like one of the M2 slots or something. Like they had these custom lids, but it was all kind of janky, or at a USB NIC, you know. So this is where that um, the other form factor comes into play, and the support for i225, i226 makes a real big advantage in that we can have SmartOS or even potentially Triton um, working on some of these smaller boxes. You can have like a Triton installation similar to what we did with the Nux, but on these other cheap boxes here. Yeah, and it looks like you answered the question well, so thank you, Brian, for that. But yeah, drivers, and then the structural thing. Tritons need to have the admin network untagged, and to drive the DHCP server makes landing a Triton on somebody's existing network without breaking it a non-trivial exercise. I understand why it's there, but this limits the case of a single node Triton. So that's noted as well. And that's why there is, I mean, there is like, obviously, like you said, standalone SmartOS as well. And so, because there, you with single node Triton, right? So you can do, you make your head node provisionable, but obviously you still have to, conform to some of the requirements. But there might be some ways to do that with standalone SmartOS as well. And then somebody mentioned in the chat, in case someone has any of the 2015 MacBook Pros around and wants to use it, I was able to run SmartOS OmniOS on MacBook Pro with the RGE driver, USB Ethernet. So that's pretty cool. I never even thought of that. I actually do have a 2015 MacBook Pro. I think my screen is broken, but I think that would actually, I could use an external screen and I could run SmartOS on that and try that and and I do have a couple USB, 100 megabit though. Come on, that's too slow. But yeah, so drivers are a big thing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
With regard to the single node Triton on someone's like home network, that is in part the motivation for developing a web GUI for SmartOS, which, yes, it's real. Yes, it's being worked on. It's not quite ready yet. We have like kind of informally called it Tuna, the Triton Ultra Nerfed API. It offers a subset of Triton features, but you can manage images, manage VMs with it. You don't get CMON, you don't get CNS, you don't get an external, like it won't work with Node Triton, but you can still SSH into it and do whatever there. But yeah, like a single node Triton is kind of limited anyway, because you've got so much of that physical node's resources consumed by just like the API stack itself. And so rather than trying to kind of like fit that into a home model, we're making SmartOS a more attractive option for a single node installation for home environments. And we're hoping that that can be a lot of people's like first step, or like a gateway to getting into Triton for larger deployments. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then the other thing that we, potentially looking at too is like VPC Fabric, potentially looking at that. I'm not sure where or when that would be coming out, but that's something we're also evaluating. So, and yes, the web GUI is real. I was trying to be kind of coy, but it is. Yeah, we are definitely working on something like that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, because I do want to, we're going to have some more testing, of course, but we do want to eventually demo that and show that off. And then, like I said, we'll have a like a 1.0, and then we'll work to discuss some features and things like that may be coming out, but at least with the MVP. And then I just want to say it's really cool. Like I'm super excited for it because I've used Proxmox, I've used XCP and I like SmartOS. I love SmartOS, and so just adding the WebGUI, it's just frosting on the cake in that you get all of the cool stuff, and then this WebGUI where you can do things with point and click, which sometimes you just want to do. And of course, there's a lot of people out there who just they want something easy, and to have that is just really, really cool. And the other thing too is that even with the I think the first version of it, I think like when we're gonna have like some, you can like add like JSON to it, so it's like even things that might not be in there yet, you can still add things onto your provisioning and things like that from the console. It's gonna be cool when we demo that. But yeah, I'm excited for that. I think that'll be really cool for that single node installation and get people to use it. And we'll start seeing more discussion on like Reddit Home Lab and seeing more people using it. I think that's what I'm excited for, is just to get the alternative to VMware. We'd like to be in the discussion, because we definitely deserve a place at the table. And because actually we were mentioning the YouTube channels that we watch, like Serve the Home, why can't I think of it, Tom Lawrence. I actually tried to get him. I was like, hey, can you talk about SmartOS? Because he's actually in Michigan, not too far from where MNX is. And he's actually like, he does manage services and stuff too. So he's actually been in certain places that MNX has also been like in the discussion as well. So I was trying to get him to talk about Triton and SmartOS, and he kind of poo-pooed it at the time. But I think adding the web GUI might just be a way for the discussion to happen, even with people like Tom Lawrence or Serve the Home. Like, just get us into the discussion. Like, hey, there's this really cool product that's actually been out for a while. They have a web GUI for standalone. Like, we've obviously had admin UI for a while, but this will just be an option for people to have. So, okay. And then one of the reasons I can't recommend FreeBSD for most people, aka the Proxmox people, is because Beehive still cannot do an arbitrary OS unless it's UEFI. Grub loader is still hell, and SmartOS is everything UEFI. And I don't. It's not. We can do. Is it non? Are we UEFI only for Beehive?
No.
No, we're
wait.
not.
No, we're
Okay.
not. You can boot VMs that are BIOS booting and UEFI booting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, the answer to that is, in SmartOS is everything UEFI. The answer is no. You can do BIOS booting. So
Yeah.
that is an option. And I don't know. I haven't used. I've actually never used FreeBSD's Beehive implementation. We do work. We do work with the Beehive team. Like, we work to, upstream stuff and work on things together. So I'm not sure what the issues may be there, but they may, there may be something for them to solve, or I'm not sure. But yeah, you can definitely do BIOS booting in SmartOS. So you can do,
I think it's.
Go ahead.
I think maybe it's just a matter of them having the ROM available, and like compiling the BIOS ROM requires like GCC 4, and so like I think that's why they've just kind of shined it. So.
And he says, fun fact, Beehive office hours is happening right now too. So maybe I'll have to try to not schedule at the same time sometimes, because I'd like to check out their office hours as well. Because, definitely we are, we're consumers and users and developers of Beehive, and so it'd be fun to jump on there and hear what they've got going on as well. Because I know we a few people that were previously at Joyent, like Patrick Mooney and Mike Zeller worked on Beehive, and I think they continue to work on it. I think Mike Zeller just joined Oxide not too long ago as well. So, there's still work going on from the former Joyent people that are at Oxide to work on Beehive, and because they're using Illumos, at the heart of their stuff as well. They just open sourced a bunch of their stuff. Of course, a lot of it is tied into their hardware. So, a lot of the cool stuff that you can use over there is actually available in Triton as well. Like, not some of the custom stuff they've made, but the cool stuff in Illumos. We have that as well. So if you're like, looking for something similar in the space, but you can't afford $1 million big rack, Triton is the way to go, and SmartOS is the way to go. But I mean, the stuff they're doing is really cool. Obviously open source hardware, and some of the stuff they open sourced, if you look, that they couldn't. I think it was like the AMD, some of the AMD stuff, and then some of the other things. They couldn't open source yet, but I think they're still going to at some point. But it's really cool what they're doing as far as connecting the hardware and software from the ground up. Yeah, it was the Chelsea stuff too. Some of the Chelsea ROMs and stuff like that, they can't open source yet, but cool stuff that's going on. C Rust asked, any suggestions for DDoS firewall protection options? If anybody has any suggestions on that.
So SmartOS has FWADM. You can make firewalls based on that, but it doesn't really do like any type of like throttling with it. So like you can say like, this port open, this port closed, but you can't say like if there's more than X connections over Y amount of time, then start blocking it. You might be able to do something like that with Flow ADM, but in general, having like advanced IPS features like that is really much better taken care of in a dedicated hardware appliance. So like my recommendation would be like, even like in any case, even like using Linux, like it can't really do that kind of thing. My recommendation would be you put a hardware firewall in front of it that can do that kind of thing. Something that's that has like hardware offload support for that kind of logic. Because to my knowledge, like IP tables can't do it, PF can't do it. Things that are software based, like in-kernel firewall stuff, don't have that kind of capability. It's pretty complex. Yeah, I mean, my recommendation's best bet is, having a dedicated hardware appliance that can do that.
Yeah, and there's
like
comments about
maybe you could do something like fail to ban or something like that. That's kind of like the best option there. But even still, like stuff that's doing all of that processing in software. If you're really talking about like a DDoS protection, processing that stuff in software is like, that's kind of like the definition of denial of service. You're going to spend, like, if you're getting enough packets that you need DDoS protection, processing all of those packets in software is going to take all of the resources of your CPUs. So having a dedicated appliance is what you're going to want for that. But then the other thing is, if you're getting enough traffic that's saturating your network link, it doesn't matter if you're dropping the packets on your network, the packets coming to you are still saturating your network link, and so then you're at the point where you're talking to like your ISP in order to help mitigate that kind of thing.
Yep.
Um,
That's what they're saying in the
so
comments too. Like
um,
once it's at you, it's already used up the
yeah,
bandwidth in your pipe. Yeah.
right. Like I sympathize uh with the need for that kind of thing. But like we do a virtualization product, not a hardware or not a firewall product, and it really like that's the thing that a firewall product needs to do.
Yeah, and like you
So
said, the ISP level, um, there's things like, if you're publicly available, like Cloudflare and some other options, right, to like spread your links or like it's like a black
yeah,
hole protocol type stuff, right? So
you
yeah,
you might be able to do something with Flow ADM because Flow ADM is kind of designed to be like a at least I think like a traffic flow simulator. Like you can say like drop X number of packets over like Y amount of time. But it's more kind of in the range of like we're going to simulate network latency and packet loss than it is intended to be a like protect the box from being flooded. Um, but you might be able to kind of like abuse it into that role. So um, you know, yeah, flow ADM. That's what, yeah. Um, so you might be able to kind of get something that you're after using flow ADM, but that's not really what flow ADM is for. Um, so
unplug your network and
yeah,
let and then plug it back in. Wait for them to
really.
drop off, right? So, but yeah, like they're saying in the comments, there's a few options like you want to be talking to your ISP. There's things that you have to do at like the backbone level as well, because like you said, once it gets to you, your bandwidth, it's even if you're dropping the packets, they're coming through your bandwidth, so they're being taken up. But yeah, that's an option.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like if you survey the landscape of the product space that we're in, like VMware's not providing anti-DDoS stuff in product. OpenStack is not doing that kind of thing in product. Um, Azure, like, what do they call their thing? Not Azure specifically,
The
but like
web
the home
application
stuff
firewall.
or uh, no, and like a web application firewall is even like a different kind of
Oh,
thing.
okay.
But that's like you could create a VM that has some web application firewall stuff installed into it that could do that. Um, but like that would be like software running in the VM. Um, but no, Microsoft's like on-prem virtualization stuff. I forget what it's called. Yeah, whatever. But they're not doing like anti-DDoS
Oh,
stuff like
Hyper-V.
right in there. Hyper-V, yeah, God, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah, so like there's not a like virtual like compute virtualization product that is like, oh yeah, we have this anti-DDoS feature like that's just built into the system. Like those kind of things just don't really exist. So
Yeah, it's not like you said in this space, it's not like a solved problem in this part of the stack because you're going to have to evaluate like you said the ISP, the other parts of your network, right? So um, there's some things you can do to do some mitigation, but it's going to really depend on the exact nature of the DDoS that's happening and things like that. Um, but hopefully, like with like ISP or some other part of the network.
did I lose audio? Is nobody talking?
I was talking and I was on mute.
Okay, okay.
I was saying,
That can happen.
yeah,
Yes.
I have two mute buttons. I have to mute the OBS and the thing, so I pressed the wrong button there. But I was just saying, yeah, like hopefully at the network, other parts of the network stack or like ISP backbone type stuff, right? That you're going to have some assistance there, because it's depending on the issue. If it's getting to you, then you have to solve for that. But hopefully, work with your ISP or whoever's your backbone provider, to help with their stack. Maybe they have something they offer or something like that to try to mitigate that. But yeah, it's a hard problem to figure out once you are getting your bandwidth taken up, because that's literally the packets are getting there. So something's going to be either eating the bandwidth, or in like the case you said, could be eating the CPU if if you even has to hit the firewall. So yeah, there's some options there, but yeah, you have to talk with your backbone provider most likely. Okay, well, we've come to kind of the end of our time here. I really appreciate everybody joining. Thank you so much for attending. We'll continue the discussion on the Discord, of course. We're going to have another office hours coming up, and then I'll talk about what we're going to the discussion on the topic. I'll post the time and everything much earlier in the date. But I hope to have some good stuff to demo for you guys. Not necessarily me demoing it, but we hope to show some stuff off in the upcoming office hours. And obviously we'll work to add more. We'll continue to work on drivers and features and things like that, and we'll continue the discussion on Discord and IRC. Thankful for all the new people joining the Discord channel. Appreciate every member that's here. Glad you guys found us. Spread the word, because we want more people to experience this and see the benefits of Triton and SmartOS, and join the discussion. So we'll continue to have this, and we'll see you online. Thanks, everybody.